right. Basically, what we do is we do sort of a conversational kind of sorry, adjusting my mic a tad. Conversational approach. We'll start out with it'll take us about an hour. We end up splitting it into two roughly 25-minute episodes. We'll start off the first one. We'll do an introduction. I'll introduce myself. Mike will introduce himself. We'll allow you to introduce yourself, and then we will dive right in, basically. Um, like I said, we keep it pretty free form. Usually, sometimes even within the introduction. Definitely, as we get in the first couple of questions, there's so many follow-ups that the next thing we know, we are all the way through the episode, basically. And then at the end, we'll make sure that we have ask you to just provide any, good links or anything that you want to do for your, to reach out, social links or anything like that. We'll also have links in the show notes, but we find that tends to be a really good way to do it. 1 second. All right. And we're going to talk about AI, and that has, like, every time we've even started in on that conversation, it keeps going. So I expect we will have nothing but rabbit trails to go down. And of course, everybody loves AI today too. So any questions before we get started?
Yeah, just one, which is like, who's the audience? How would you
Uh,
characterize them?
Audience is typically we're looking at people that are starting their career in technology, or maybe, I guess, and it could go further in, but usually in your, like, junior to mid-level kind of technology developer type, along with a lot of them. We're really focusing on the ones that are have an entrepreneurial side, so they're doing side hustles and things like that. So it's really a combination of young entrepreneurs, technology savvy entrepreneurs, and technologists. So that's a lot of where this focus will be, is how AI can be both as, I guess, an implementer of it, but also how we can use AI to, help ourselves in our daily routines and things like that.
Great,
All right.
great.
Then we will dive right into it. Oh, by the way, it is video and audio. We have some of the pre-show and post-show stuff does end up on the audio side, but then we use our specific, audio cut points for the podcast, the audio only. Tres, dos, uno. Well, hello and welcome back. We are continuing our season of Building Better Foundations. This is the Building Better Developer podcast, also known as Developreneur. I am Rob Broadhead, one of the founders of Developreneur, also the founder of RB Consulting, where we help you assess technology and build a roadmap for success. In the world of good things and bad things, good thing is that I live in Nashville, where weather changes all the stinking time. So a little bit of a cold snap was followed by a warm snap, I guess. Maybe it was a light snap. So got to have the windows open and things like that, which was great. Got some fresh air, got to air things out. Downside is also with that sometimes comes rain. So as I got everything open, rain started to pour, and it's like, uh-oh, got to make sure everything's closed back down, or at least enough so I don't, like, drift away in a flood. Someone who has grounded firmly and not about to drift away in a flood. Michael, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Malash. I'm one of the co-founders of Developreneur, also known as Building Better Developers. I'm also the founder of Envision QA, where we help businesses build reliable software through custom development and expert testing. Good thing, bad thing. Good thing, had some medical procedures recently and they all came back good. Downside, the prep for those procedures sucked.
And today, our guest is Hunter Jensen. And I'm not even going to try to introduce you. I'm going to allow you to start with the introduction and introduce yourselves to the audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Hunter Jensen, founder CEO of both Barefoot Solutions, which is a custom software development shop, as well as Barefoot Labs, which is just now rolling out a product to help mid-sized companies deploy internal AI systems to boost their employee productivity.
Well, that actually leads us right into a great starting question: is when a company is starting out and trying to implement AI, which it feels like everybody is right now, What are some common mistakes or red flags or things that you would recommend if they're diving into this that they should take a look for?
Yeah, a lot of mistakes are being made. This is kind of the Wild West right now. Best practices are currently in development, right? And one of the biggest mistakes that I see, especially like at the leadership level, is, CEOs have this vision of a model that knows absolutely everything about my business, that can, help in every single facet of that business because it knows all and it connects to all the systems and all the rest of it. And what they don't realize is that uh, that's not really possible right now. And the reason, there's many reasons why that's not possible, but one of them is simply access control. How could we trust the model to not divulge information to people using it that they're not supposed to know, right? If a model is trained on everybody's HR data, as an example, we cannot trust that model to interact with individual employees and protect other people's HR information. It's just, we're not there yet. The technology's not there yet. The guardrails are very inconsistent at best. And so it really needs to kind of get a little more narrow in focus and not be this one all-knowing kind of, my business model that can help with for everyone with everything. That's just not really feasible right now.
So that makes complete sense. I think everybody, it's like, oh, we would love to see all of our, our financial numbers, but then when you start saying, but then also that means you're going to have to plug in everybody's salary and stuff like that, then it's like, wait a minute, I'm not sure I want access. People have access to that. And of course, there's a clarifying. It's like, yes, even if you're going to have, it may be that the LLM knows averages and sums and stuff like that. But if you're giving it the data to generate those things, then still somewhere in there, you've got the data. You know everything about your business. So with that in mind, like, what is and maybe there's some CEOs out there that are like going, oh, crud, I didn't think about that. What is a good like pilot program or a good way to get started?
Yeah, so, a good way to just get started, I can't remember the last time I talked to a company, at least an American one, that isn't either on Microsoft or G Suite, right? Both of them have products. There's Microsoft 365 Copilot and there's Gemini for G Suite. It's not that expensive, and it gives exposure to your team to an LLM that's safe. Because guess what? If you don't, they are going and using ChatGPT, even if it's not, against your AI governance policies. If you have an AI governance policy, which you need one, by the way, if you don't, we have to give tools to our team, or we're putting our confidential data at risk. Period. Full stop. Right. And so, firing up a license, some licenses, some seats for those products is a nice way to kind of dip your toe in. Now, those products have major limitations. And so that's a starting point. That's not where you end up. That's not the overall solution. But it's a nice place to, get your feet wet, see what the appetite is, see what the skills of your team are, whether they're adopting this stuff, and get a sense for, as an organization, what direction you need to go in.
So from there, well, I guess actually I will step back a little bit because you mentioned, Copilot versus Gemini, and of course there's ChatGPT and all of those. Sort of as a technology nerd kind of query, sort of curiosities, what have you found, or have you found one engine better than the other? Particularly, I know that they have their different flavors, but particularly from a business point of view, if somebody's trying to do sort of a general business, marketing, sales, that kind of AI.
Yeah, you know, I, Copilot's better than Gemini in general. But it really just depends on, like, on your existing stack. Like, that's not even really a decision that you're going to be making at this point, unless you're new. And that's a big decision. are we going to build this business on the Microsoft stack or on the Google stack? And so what model you end up using really depends on that. And that's just Gemini v Copilot is not enough to make that decision on how you're going to build your business on what stack, right? There's a lot of factors that go into it. That being said, Gemini 3 came out, I think it was this week, and it's topping leaderboards all over the place. And so, it's really historically been quite interesting, right? In 2017, it was a Google researcher and research team that kind of discovered transformer models, and they published a paper called Attention is All You Need. And then the race was on, and Google lost that race like big time, right? ChatGPT, do you guys remember Bard, which was the premature, like, oh gosh, we're getting crushed by OpenAI, like let's release Bard, and it was just awful, so bad they had to rebrand it. And so, basically Microsoft, through its majority investment in OpenAI, won that race to like come to market with, generative pre-trained transformer models, GPT, that's what that stands for. What we've seen though, and honestly, like maybe this week is when Google kind of officially caught up, where they are, their model. So now it's like, okay, new release of GPT-5, that's state of the art. Gemini 3, that's actually a little bit better. Now that's state of the art. And then Claude does something, and then Mistral does something, and then DeepSeek is over here doing amazing things. So it's become, while OpenAI clearly came out in front, way out in front, it's getting way more competitive now. And like each new release is better than the best release that the other companies have put out. So it's an arms race now, which is really good for us as consumers of this technology, right? We want it to be competitive. That brings down pricing, that improves all the products. Nobody's complacent. Everybody's sprinting as fast as they can because we've got a real competition going on. And it's not just Microsoft v. Google or, OpenAI and Microsoft v. Google, right? There's all these other players, and Anthropic and Mistral and you name them are doing really interesting things and are starting to specialize a bit, right? Like Claude was really great at writing code before some of the others were really great at writing code. And so, the landscape is just evolving so fast that it's honestly quite hard to keep track of it all.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the early Java days, back when it was Oak and then it became Java, and then you didn't have any of the parsers for DOM or SAX. I mean, it was like the sky's the limit. Libraries were everywhere every other week. For those getting into AI, so you talked a little bit about Copilot and Gemini kind of being a good, safer way to get started to protect your stacks and your 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 information. You mentioned the LLM. For most people, they just see AI as AI. It's like, oh yeah, there's some model back there. I basically ask it something, I get something out of it. For developers, what's a good way, or can you explain like what you mean by like each has a better stack? How would you suggest developers or entrepreneurs, as they approach these AI models, how to look for the right AI model for what they need? Sorry, it took me a while to get there, but there's just kind of a lot with what you brought up that I just kind of want to get a little more focused on that.
Yeah. It can be hard. It can really be hard. Um, what I would suggest. Okay, so let's take out the like confidential information piece of this. So let's say there's just individuals, they're starting something out, they're not dealing in, confidential client data. ChatGPT 5.1 is probably your starting point. It's the most robust, the most mature, and just generally the ChatGPT platform is the right place to start right now, I would say. Now, I haven't even evaluated Gemini 3 yet, so I might say something different next week, but that's a good starting point. But what I encourage folks that are starting out to do is try out a few. Like I will often have open, let's call it three. Maybe I've got Perplexity and I've got Claude and I've got ChatGPT open. And when I'm starting a task, I will often ask all three and then decide which one I like the most, after the first few prompts, and then dive in deeper with that one. Because there's a lot to be learned. I mean, like, ChatGPT 5, for example, is horribly slow because in my opinion, right now, especially 5, and maybe not so much as 5.1, but it's like overthinking everything. The amount of time it takes to do its reasoning and to call all these tools is tremendous. Like we can't even deploy 5 for our product because of how long it takes and how many tokens it gobbles up, right? I mean, you can wait minutes sometimes. And so, I encourage kind of switching, at least at the beginning of a particular task, to figure out which one is going to work. Now, at this point, most of them work for most of the things. You know what I mean? One might be the best, but do you really need the best for what you're doing today? Now, like when you're making a decision about, okay, we need to pick a model to put into our product, like that's important. You need to test out the different models and see which ones are working. But really, why are you building a product that can only use a single model? You should be building your product so that it's model agnostic to a certain extent. And depending on what you're trying to accomplish, you may be using different models for different things. And you need to be building so that you can accommodate new versions of models that come out, right? And have a full test harness in place so you can evaluate new models quickly to see if they're a good fit for your product. So it's ever changing. And so like I would caution folks starting out to like go all in on one model. You need to be thinking of this as like a multi-model world where you're switching back and forth all the time. And like, this is a little just like a little hack. Sometimes it's interesting to, okay, ask ChatGPT 5 something, take both the prompt and the response that you got, plug it into a different LLM, say, this is what I learned, or this is what GPT-5 said. What do you think about this? Right. And get it to kind of critique, like, are there errors here? Or is there missing information here? I really like doing that. And it can really illuminate, hallucinations, which still happen way less, but they're still happening. And just like give it some oversight.
Nice. I like that because I've done that quite a bit in the coding world. Thankfully, I mainly use ChatGPT as far as code goes to like just build me a quick like stub or something, the boilerplate stuff. Or if you have a problem, it's like, hey, give me this. It gives me a solution. If I don't like it, I pop it in something else and kind of troubleshoot. Or you can almost look at it and know it's wrong sometimes.
Sometimes.
Um, Following that step, so you mentioned, how do you, at the beginning you talked about keeping the information safe, protecting the access. So as we're using AI more, as we're building our tool sets with these LLMs, what are some steps that people, as they start evolving their access with or their experience with AI, how can they start protecting themselves and their data from being misused or exposing unnecessary data to other people within the model?
Yeah. So the first step is you need to pay for access to these things. If you're not paying, they're doing whatever they want with your data, whatever they want. And so you have to actually evaluate the licenses that you pay for to make sure that they are in line with like the kind of security posture that you need to have. Some folks, marketing folks, for example, they don't really care all that much. What they make, they put out into the world on purpose, right? But then there are others like attorneys that absolutely cannot, put confidential client information into a third-party system. Even if they're protected by the license, they still can't oftentimes. And so it's a spectrum of like what your needs are. And so the first step would just be actually read the licenses or ask them for summaries or something like that to make sure that what you're paying for is in line with what you need from a data protection standpoint.
Okay, that makes sense. To follow up on that, okay, so now we've kind of talked about the introduction to this, we've talked about the access. So now if I want to start building that model for my company, start building an application or putting my information in to have AI help me analyze my company, things along that lines. What's kind of the next step in the progression of that for what you see?
Yeah. So this is precisely why we built our product Compass is to kind of be that next step. What as a company, you need something that will connect to your other systems, that will leverage your existing access control that's in place already. And that you can own, that you can host yourself, right? Copilot works great if you are integrating with stuff on the Microsoft stack, but if you have other, systems, it doesn't work that great. If you need to process really large files, it doesn't work at all. It actually completely falls down. And so, the next step is implementing, looking for some models. There's a lot available that are open source models. You can also get access to not open source models through AWS Bedrock or through Azure Foundry and Azure OpenAI. And so, you get to a point where you can't be sending this information outside of your own firewall. Like it needs to remain in your network. For companies that are like serious about data security or compliance or risk control, things like that, you really need to own the stack. And so I suggest deploying some of those with an application on top of it for your team to be able to interact with it. And so when I say piggyback on existing access control, I want to click in on that. What does that mean? We talked about these financial reports, right? Let's say I want to pull in financials from a third-party system. Now, if I have a system that's connected to it, I can authenticate as myself to that QuickBooks. And QuickBooks will only give me what I'm allowed to see, right? And then I can put that into the context of what it is that I'm trying to do and say, hey, generate a report for me or do this analysis for me or what have you. And so by piggybacking on the existing access control, we no longer have to trust the model. The model doesn't know all and see all. The model that you're talking to right now only knows what you're allowed to know, and it can only access what you're allowed to access. And so when you build it out that way, like we cannot trust the models. The LLMs are not to be trusted, right? We need our own mechanisms for protecting our business and our data. And so by architecting it that way, you kind of sidestep that problem by saying, well, we already have access control, of course, right? The CEO can access the financials, but some knowledge workers can't. And that's kind of the next phase is when you're ready for this like internal AI system that's connecting to all of your other stuff. And that's when it gets really powerful.
And that's where we're going to pause part one of our interview with Hunter Jensen. Great conversation. It's one of those that it seems like every time we mention AI, it sort of goes off the rails. But in this case, those were the rails. This is somebody that is a CEO of an AI driven company. When you've got a .ai at the end of the name, hopefully that means something to you. In this case, I think you see that it does. Hunter actually has really thought about this stuff and is a great resource. And we will continue that in the next episode. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it and all that you guys have done, just hanging out there as we're getting towards the end of the year, just trying to be in that very thankful mood. And you guys are at the top of our list. Go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time.